So I just recently added the ability to generate an unattend.xml answer file with Winhance. And essentially what this is going to allow you to do is to create the perfect Windows version for you. And it's also going to allow you to debloat, optimize and customize the way you want it during the Windows installation process, so that by the time you get to the desktop, it'll already be set up for you. And you can focus on the rest of the setup you need to do and not worry about Windows settings and Windows apps and that type of thing. Now, I've already created in-depth tutorials on the current version of Winhance, and I'll link those in the description down below, but I haven't really created a dedicated video on how to generate an auto-unattend XML with Winhance and show you exactly how it works based on the selections that you have in Winhance. So this is what this video is going to be, and I'm going to show you how it's supposed to be used to create your perfect version of Windows. So to get started, I'm recording this on my main computer, and I'm going to be generating the auto-unattended XML file on this computer. Then I'll be creating bootable Windows installation media, and I'm then going to install it on one of my other computers. And then I'll show you that the selections we had in Winhance has been carried over to the new computer on a fresh Windows installation. So as you can see here, with Winhance, you can generate an auto-unattend XML file to add to a Windows ISO, to customize Windows during installation based on your selections in Winhance. So how it works is the apps that you select, the checkboxes that you check on the screen that you see in the background here, on the Windows app screen will be uninstalled automatically during the Windows installation process. And then the settings in the optimize and customize screens will be added according to their current state in Winhance. So if you're sure your selections are correct, you can continue. If not, hit cancel and then review your app and setting selections and come back here. So I'm not ready yet, so I'm going to cancel. And we're going to start from the software app screen and then go down to optimize and then customize. So first off, we're going to decide which apps we want to remove on this new Windows installation. Now you can see I've only got 4 apps installed anyway at the moment, which is Calculator, Notepad, Paint and Terminal. So I can basically just go ahead and click on select all that's not installed, because for me, these are basically the apps that I want to have installed on this new version of Windows, because these are Windows apps that I actually use. The rest of the stuff I don't use, including Microsoft Edge and OneDrive. Now, if we scroll down, we'll also get to the legacy Windows capabilities and then the Windows optional features. And it's also selected those items that are not installed at the moment. And then those that are installed, in this case, OpenSSH client and the Windows Media Player, the legacy Media Player app, that's not been selected, which means it won't be removed during the Windows installation process. Now, the Windows optional features aren't really bloat. The only thing here is recall. So I'm going to deselect all of these because I don't actually want to have them removed, because in my opinion, they're not bloat. And some of these aren't even going to be enabled automatically anyway. But I will leave recall checked because I want that disabled on this new Windows installation. Now you can go ahead and select the items that you want to have removed. Remember, the items that are checked, those items are going to be removed during the Windows installation process. And just selecting these checkboxes does nothing to your computer. You have to go and remove the items before they're actually removed. So you can select the checkboxes of the items that you want to have removed on the new Windows installation. And then once that's done, you can just leave it like it is now. And then you can go on to the next section, because these will stay selected as you navigate through Winhance. So I'm going to go to the optimize section, and there are a ton of settings in Winhance, especially on the optimize screen. So I'm not going to go through every single one. Like I said, I'm creating this on my main PC, and it's basically already set up the way that I want this new computer to be set up. So I'm already happy with the privacy settings that I have here, as well as the ads and suggested and promotional content. I've set that to deny because I don't want any of that. I've turned the lock screen off and all of its subset settings. Basically, all of these privacy tracking and ad settings have been turned off already because this is my main computer and I've already done this with the previous version of unattended Winstall. If we go over to the power section, I've got the Winhance power plan selected, and I don't even actually have any of the other plans enabled at the moment. Now, on a fresh Windows install, you will have the basic, balanced, and power saver plans. Some PCs also come with the high performance plan pre-enabled. So that is going to exist on the new installation that we're going to do. but I'm going to leave the Winhance power plan selected because that's what I actually want to use. And all of these advanced power settings are already the way that I want it. So I'm not going to change anything here because it's already set up the way that I want it to be set up when we reinstall Windows. If we go over to the gaming and performance section, it's the same thing here. I've already set up everything the way that I want it. I've already got the processor settings that I want to have, the graphics settings, network settings. I don't use Xbox, so that's all been turned off. And then the system services are all set to manual. Some of them are disabled for the services that I recommend to be disabled. The same with all of the scheduled tasks. I'm going to disable this scheduled task as well, since I don't want that to be run. And then the visual effects is set to custom, which is what I want because this is basically a performance-based preset for visual effects, but some of these settings are enabled to just not make Windows look bad without really impacting the performance of your computer, or at least the perceived performance of your computer. And then the accessibility settings have all been turned off. And then for the Windows updates, currently I've got the Windows updates set to disabled because there's been really bad Windows updates released in the past few weeks and months. But this isn't really recommended because it does leave your system vulnerable. So I usually recommend the security updates only option, which is what the Winhance recommended config has, as well as the new version of unattended winstall. But for me, this is my personal answer file that I'm creating now. And on this new Windows installation, I want the updates to be disabled. So I'm going to leave it on the disabled option. And for the delivery optimization, I'm actually going to set that to disabled as well, because I don't want any of that. But in my case, because Windows updates are disabled, these settings does not really have any effect because Windows Update won't work for me. But if I were to re-enable Windows Update at some point, then I would still want these settings to be in the correct state so that they're already pre-configured. And I already have my desired states for these settings set up. The same with the notifications. I turn all of that off. I don't want any of these additional settings. I do leave the notification enabled to notify when apps request your location because I think that's pretty important, as well as the Windows security notifications. And then for the sound section, I've just got all of these disabled as well. And for the sound ducking preference, I put that on do nothing because that's the way that I want it. Then if we go over to the customize section, Windows theme, I like dark mode with the transparency effects disabled. The clean taskbar and clean start menu commands are executed automatically in the answer file. So you don't add that, that's just added automatically. And then I hide the search and taskbar. I put the taskbar to the left on Windows 11, which is what I'm creating this answer file on. I disable the task view button, disable widgets, and then I use the end task in taskbar option. For the start menu, I set it to the more pins layout. I hide the recommended section, and then I disable all of these other settings and also disable the Bing search results in the start menu. And then for the Explorer, I don't really use the setting to remove the shortcut suffix from new shortcuts, but I do use the classic context menu. I use the take ownership command on the right-click context menu, but I don't really use the show or hide extensions on the context menu entry. This was a feature that was requested by someone, so I added it. And then I also leave the open in Windows terminal enabled. I disable these dynamic lighting settings. Then I do open File Explorer to this PC. The rest of this stuff is also disabled. And then in the files and folders section, I do display the full path in the title bar, show hidden files and folders, hide empty drives, and then show file extensions. The rest of this stuff is pretty default in Windows settings. But if you go down, I don't use the Windows Photo Viewer. Although it was a very good photo viewer for its time, it can't view WebP files. So there's just some file formats that can't be displayed with it. And that's why I leave it off. And I use other third-party image viewers that just work better in my opinion. I do remove the home folder and the gallery folder from the navigation pane. And then I also disable all of these other settings, which I think is default in Windows. Now I'm creating this auto unattend file on Windows 11. That's what I'm running on my main computer. And I've got the filter applied in Winhance. So I'm not seeing settings for Windows 10. But if you wanted to create an answer file with Winhance that has the settings in Winhance for Windows 10 and Windows 11, then you can just untoggle this filter and you'll see in the UI, you're going to have some of these settings that says, but this setting is only compatible with this build or it only applies to Windows 10. And if you're running it on Windows 10, it's going to say it only applies to Windows 11. So usually when I create the unattend XML file, I will toggle the filter off so I can see all of the settings, because adding these settings to your answer file and then letting it execute isn't really going to have a major effect on Windows. It's not like these few registry entries are going to break Windows 11 if you have them on Windows 11 and vice versa. Windows is basically just going to ignore that registry entry because it doesn't exist on the other version of Windows. So now that we're done, you can see if I navigate back to the software and apps section, the checkboxes for these items are still selected from what I had before. So all of these settings are now in the desired state in Winhance that I want to be included into the unattend XML file. So to create it, I'm going to click on Advanced Tools, and then I'm going to generate the unattend XML. I'm now sure that everything is correct, so I'm going to click on Continue, and then I'm just going to save this file to the desktop. So I'll click on Save, and then it's going to give me a message that says the file has been created successfully. Now, I've done many tutorials on how you can use these unattend XML files on Windows installation media, and there's really a few different ways that you can include this on Windows installation media, and I'll link those guides in the description down below. You can also find them on the unattended winstall GitHub page. But the way that I recommend you use it is to just use wimutil, which is included in Winhance. So I'm going to open wimutil, and this is a 4-step process that you can go through. So the first thing you'll have to do is select your Windows ISO file. If you don't have one, you can download one from Microsoft with either the Windows 10 or Windows 11 button here. But I already have the latest Windows 11 ISO file downloaded. So I'm going to click on Select ISO. I'll select the Windows 11 25H2 ISO, then click on Open. And then it's got a default working directory in the temp directory. But I'm actually going to select a folder, and then I'm just going to select the desktop and click on OK, and it'll now create a working directory here on the desktop for me. So I'm going to extract the contents of the ISO file so that after that we can then add the unattend XML file that we created. We'll then also have the option to extract and add drivers from the current operating system, and then we can create the new ISO file. The ISO has been extracted successfully. So if we click on OK, we have the option to convert this WIM to ESD, but we're not going to do that. We're going to add an XML file, and we could have generated and added the Winhance XML file here in wimutil, but in this case, I'm going to select the XML that we generated. I'll double click on that to select it, and it'll then be added to the Windows installation media. And as you can see, you can only select one of the following options. These three don't work together, and XML files from different services don't work together. Now we've got the third step, which is to extract and add drivers. And this is optional. So what I'd usually recommend is to extract and add the drivers from the current operating system, but I'm not going to do that in this video. And the reason for that is that I'm not going to be reinstalling Windows on the same computer that I'm running Winhance on. It's going to be on a different computer with other hardware, and I don't have those drivers now, so I'm not going to be adding any drivers. But if you were creating the unattend file on the computer that you're going to be reinstalling Windows on, and you were using Winhance on that computer to do it, then I would extract and add the drivers from the current operating system so that they're already reinstalled during the Windows installation process. But I'm not going to do that in this video. I have done it in the in-depth Winhance guide that I created, which is also linked down below if you want to check it out. So moving on, we can then create the new ISO file. If you don't have the Windows ADK package installed, you will have an option here to download and install it, and you must do that before you can create the ISO file. But once you've installed it, then you can select a location to output the ISO file, and it's going to be called Winhance Windows. But I'm just going to add 11 to the end of this so that I know that it's Windows 11. Then I'll click on Save and click on Create ISO, and it's then going to start creating that ISO file. So the ISO has been created successfully, and we can open the folder containing the ISO. So I'll just click on Yes, and then we've got our Winhance Windows 11 ISO file there. So now I'll need to copy this to the USB flash drive that I'm going to be using to install Windows. So I'm just going to right click, copy, then go to this PC, and then the flash drive I'm using is the Ventoy flash drive, and then I'll just right click and then paste it. Now, Ventoy is a software that you can use to create a bootable USB flash drive. And basically what will need to happen is you just download the software from GitHub, then you run the Ventoy to disk file, you select the flash drive that you want to make a bootable flash drive with Ventoy. And bear in mind, this is going to format it and delete anything that's currently on that flash drive. So make sure that you have a backup of it, or that it's not important and that you don't mind losing it, because it is going to be deleted. But basically you then install Ventoy onto that flash drive, and basically once it's done, it'll then be a bootable USB flash drive that you can use. And then you can just copy your ISO file over to that flash drive and then use it to install Windows. Okay, so now that the Windows 11 ISO file has been copied to my Ventoy flash drive, I'm going to go over to the other computer and then I'm going to install Windows there. I'm going to be using an HDMI capture card to do it, so I'll see you there. So we're starting up, so I'm just going to press F12 to get to the boot menu. Then I'm going to select the UEFI USB, which is the Ventoy USB. I'll select that, and then it's going to boot to that Ventoy flash drive. Now I've got 3 ISO files on here, but I want to use the Winhance Windows 11 ISO. So I'll select that, press enter, and then press enter again to boot in normal mode, and then it will boot from that Windows ISO file. So now we can just go through the normal Windows setup process. Just going to select my country and region, I'll click on next again. Then I'm going to need to delete the partitions on the SSD here. This is a test, so I'm just going to select it and then click on next, and then it'll start installing Windows 11. So now that we've just loaded into the user account, you can see that dark mode has been applied, and we also have the dark mode Windows wallpaper. Now, if we just have a look at some of the changes, if I open the start menu, there are no pinned apps and the recommended section has been hidden, which is what I selected in Winhance. And it only has the apps that I selected: Calculator, Notepad, Paint, and then Terminal. Now, if I go into settings, one of the things that I selected was to disable the Windows updates. So if I go to Windows Update, you'll see that something went wrong. And that is because the Windows Update component has been removed. So that successfully made it through to the new installation of Windows. The same thing if we look at the privacy and security and we look at general, all of these settings will be disabled, which is the way that I selected it in Winhance. I wanted all of this to be disabled, and that is the way that it's set to. Same with system and notifications. Notifications have been disabled and all of these items have been unchecked. If I close these settings and we do a right click, you'll see that it has the classic context menu, which is also something that I selected. If I open File Explorer, we can see that the gallery and home entries have been removed here. And if we also look at the file and folder options, it opens to this PC. All of those privacy checkboxes has been unchecked. We have the option to show hidden files and folders, hide empty drives, and then show the file extensions. And as you can see, this is exactly how I wanted it to be set up. Now, another thing I want to have a look at is the visual effects. So if we do a search for visual effects and we go to the performance options, you'll see only the options that I had selected in Winhance. Those 5 options, which is basically a performance preset with some of the quality of life options here just to make Windows look better. Stuff like when you have an open window and you click and drag it, it actually shows the contents and doesn't have this ugly rectangle. That has been enabled. And this, in my opinion, is how I would use Windows 11 on this computer and how I would set up Windows 11 for myself. Now, on my main computer, I do use Start All Back, which is an app that allows you to move the taskbar and make it transparent. So I also use that. But if I was using the standard Windows 11 without any third-party apps, this is how I would set it up. And then just pin the items to the start menu that I'm actually going to use, like settings and maybe the file explorer, so that I can have easy access to that. Now, if you want to have a look at the log files, you can navigate to local disk C, program data, unattend, logs, and then there's a enhancements log file. And then you can look through this log to see exactly what happened and all of the settings that were applied during the Windows installation process. You can find all of that info here, and also when it applied the user customizations entries. Also, this is applied for any user. So if we go to settings and we create a new user account, so we go to other users and then add another account. I'm going to just call this standard, click on next, and then this will be a local account. You can also create a Microsoft account, but in this case, I'm just using a local account, and I'm not going to make it an administrator. It's just going to stay as a standard user. So let's just log in to that user. Let's sign out of memory and then log in on the standard user. Now it should set up the user account and then restart the computer, because that's what it needs to do to apply all of the changes to that user account. So there we go, it's restarting now. Then it'll load back into the standard user. And as you can see, dark mode has been applied for this user. It's got the wallpaper as well. Just going to dismiss this again. And we've basically got the same clean user experience that we had on the administrator user that we were using before. But this is now a standard user with all of the same settings applied to that user profile. So this does work on all of the new user profiles that you'll create on this computer, and it's not just applied to the first user account that you create. You then also have a shortcut on the desktop here to install Winhance, so you can install any additional software that you might need since you don't have a browser if you removed Microsoft Edge, and you can use Winhance to do that. But I've gone over that and many other things in the in-depth Winhance guide, and I'll link that at the end of this video. And if you find my work valuable, please consider supporting me and the work that I do. You can find a link to the Ko-Fi page down below. And for those of you who's already supporting me financially, and for those of you who's still going to, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And if you're not able to support financially, please like and share this video so it can reach a wider audience of people. It also helps more than you know. But with all of that being said, I just want to give a special shout out to all of my YouTube members as well. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to all of you guys soon.